Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today's video was actually sparked by a few articles that I've been seeing and just a trend that I've been noticing in which homeschoolers and charter school families are being lumped together as if they are all the same thing. And so today I really wanted to talk to you about why the difference between homeschooling and charter schooling is too important to ignore. If you look at homeschooling and charter schooling on a very basic level, yes, a lot of people will refer to charter schooling as homeschooling because it is typically learning that is done inside the home. But the fact is that most states actually differentiate between charter schooling and homeschooling. They have specific homeschooling laws, and then there are other laws for charter school students, sometimes virtual charter schools, sometimes private charter schools, but they are then considered to be public school students or private school students, and they have a whole different set of regulations that homeschoolers do not require. So if you aren't really sure what the difference is between the two, and I can understand if you don't, because yeah, there's a lot of mishmashing and a lot of articles are just basically referring to people who are using charter schools. They're referring to them only as homeschoolers, and they are making it sound as if all homeschoolers do things the way through charter schools. And so what the difference is, and yes, there is a difference, is that charter schools will typically be, or charter school students will typically be getting funding from different areas, very often through the government if they are going through a public charter school. And that funding will give them money towards curriculum. It gives them money towards field trips. It gives them money towards supplies, an assortment of things. With that funding, though, comes a really strict set of regulations and also a very strict guideline on exactly what curriculum is and is not allowable. I've seen that some charter schools will even not approve certain field trips, certain types of field trips, certain materials are not allowed under the charter school funding. And so while yes, it's from the outset you are receiving all of this, free stuff through the charter school in order to teach your kids at home, you are also having to jump through hoops in order to get that. Now, homeschooling, on the other hand, you do not get any of that free stuff. So homeschooling families do have to pay out everything out of their own pocket, which, can be really intimidating to a lot of people who haven't really thought about how to cut back on their budget so that they can educate their children within their own means. But the fact is that when you are a homeschooler and you are doing these things on your own, with that comes the absolute freedom to choose any curriculum that you want. You can, pretty much have carte blanche of everything. Yes, different states have different homeschool laws, but if you compare the homeschool laws with the charter school laws, the homeschooling laws are usually extremely lighter than those of the charter schools. A lot of the charter schools, the students still have to do like the standardized testing. A lot of charter schools still have to do Common Core. And so a lot of the things that homeschool parents are trying to get their kids away from, a lot of charter school students are not able to escape from with their children. And so I know that a lot of people don't like when I try to differentiate between charter school and homeschool, and I honestly don't know why. Maybe it's just because they think that I'm being elitist about it, but that's really not what it is, because whether you are charter schooling your kids or whether you are homeschooling your kids, you are still doing so much more than if your kids were in a public school setting. So, this isn't a video to bash charter schooling at all, but it really is more about just explaining that there are differences between the two and why it's so important that you understand these differences. So I mentioned before that charter school students get a lot of free stuff, but what you have to understand, and I'm mainly going to be referring to public charter schools, when the government gives you free stuff, it's never for free. It always comes with strings attached. And, most people know that. And I mentioned in another video that homeschoolers, on the other hand, now traditional homeschoolers, private homeschoolers, no matter what side of the political spectrum they're on, actually seem to have a very libertarian spirit. Homeschoolers really like their freedom. They like that independence in choosing the things that they want to teach their children, choosing their own materials, and they like the fact that they don't have to worry about someone else telling them what it is that they have to teach to their kids. So one of the problems that is happening with these lines being blurred between the two is that, first of all, it's insinuating that all homeschoolers receive state fundings and that they thus have all of these restrictions on their curriculum. And it's also insinuating that all homeschoolers have these strict regulations that are pushed on charter school families. And in essence, what's happening when they're pushing these two different educational approaches together is, on the one hand, it is deceiving people who are wanting to start bringing their kids home. Some people are jumping into charter schooling thinking that that is the only way that you can homeschool. And yeah, a lot of times they are looking out for the free money that they get for their curriculum, especially if they're low-income families. And on the other hand, a lot of these people don't understand that when you are homeschooling, you don't have to accept these things, and you also have a bit more freedom in what you choose to do. So what is happening is that both the homeschool movement and the charter school movement are growing at a rapid rate, which is awesome. High five to everybody who charter schools or homeschools their kids, because you are getting your kids out of that public school system. But what you need to remember and what you need to realize is that the public education system and the government in general likely is not too happy about this increase in the number of homeschooling students and the number of charter school students. Now, I will say that the government is probably even more against private homeschooling because we don't have all of these additional regulations. We aren't being told specifically what it is that we have to teach. We don't have agendas being foisted upon us that we kind of have to take just because we're accepting funding. So I think that what is happening is they're starting to blur these two things together because they want people to choose charter schooling by default over homeschooling because they don't even understand that there is a difference. Because with that charter schooling, yes, comes all of those additional regulations that I keep going on about that homeschoolers do not want to exist. But what I actually see happening is I have been seeing so many articles and posts and comments by people in some level of the government against private homeschooling family. They're always out there. And, if you've been to my channel before, I've gone over some of these articles. We have been called far-right white supremacists, and they have been, accusing homeschooling parents of abuse. And, all of these attacks have been coming to private homeschooling families. And it is clear. And, I also have to say the media is complicit in this attack on homeschooling. They do not do their homework. They take one-sided comments from groups that have vendettas against homeschooling, and that is what they use as their research and as their experts in their articles. But what is happening is, yeah, there is a crackdown on homeschooling, and I can see in the future that they're going to start cracking down on it more and more, and it would be far easier for them to kind of blend the two together into more of a charter schooling homeschool than the private homeschool that, about 4 million kids are doing nowadays. And, it's a scary thought to those of us who are homeschooling our kids because of independence, because of freedom, because of liberty, because we want the option of what our children are going to be taught. But that is what I see happening, is that pretty soon, since charter school and homeschool are both being lumped together as homeschool or home education now, you're going to eventually start having people in the government or status who start looking at the two groups as one, and they're going to say, well, why is this one group, why is it that they have to have their curriculum approved? And why do they have to do all of these additional things that this homeschooling group over here does not have to do? What's the disconnect between the two? And likely they know very well what the disconnect is between the two, that they are two different educational approaches. But I have a feeling that that is where this is headed. They are going to start pushing those same regulations onto private homeschoolers because charter schooling is rising and it is being referred to so often as homeschooling, despite the fact that most charter school students in most states don't actually follow homeschool laws. They follow public school laws or private school laws. So that's something that I think that a lot of people who are charter schooling and still call themselves homeschoolers, they don't seem to think about that. And I understand that you say that you're homeschooling. You're still doing school at home with your kids, and they're doing their work at home. And again, kudos to you, because I don't think any kids should be in the public education system anymore. But I think that it is really, really important that we make the distinction between the two. Another thing that I really, really worry about when it comes to the line between charter schooling and homeschooling being blurred, especially because there are so many public charter school students who are doing their work at home. It worries me that once this blending is complete, this conglomeration of the two groups of educational approaches, what I'm afraid of is that the public education system, the government education system that so many homeschooling parents are trying to protect their children from, they are going to take over the charter schooling. And in essence, what was once a freedom of educating your children is still going to be taken over by the public education system, by the government. They're going to put their foot in the door, and they are going to be the ones educating our kids, even if we are doing it from our home. And we can't let that happen. So while it might seem trivial for those of us who are homeschooling to be so dead set on making sure that people understand the difference between the two, there is a reason for that. We are educating our children the way that we are doing it. We are making these financial sacrifices for our children because we want to be able to teach them the things that are important to us. And we want to do it without having to worry about an agenda being pushed on our kids by the government. And if this blending, if this blurring of the line continues to happen, pretty soon there won't be private homeschooling left. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube always disables my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And today I want to give a shout out to my Patreon patron, Christina. Christina, thank you so much. You are one of my more recent patrons, and it is just an encouragement that I still have people after all this time, who are enjoying what I'm doing and who are finding my videos to be helpful. And that is truly so important to me. That's why I do this. And I hope you all have a great day.